Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we're going to start with lecture 10. The very first thing we're going to begin with is some of the questions you've asked and some of the things I've sent, but we haven't had the chance to discuss. I wanted to discuss it in audio, not in writing, because I wanted you to understand where it comes from. Now, the first thing we do when we come across any piece of news, whether it is in Arabic or in English, as we mentioned, we have to go through some steps. So the first step is to make sure that this is a verified piece of news. It is correct news. It's not hasbara. It's not fake news. Then we need to look at the language. We need to identify any words that may not suit the context of this particular piece of news. Now, if we look at this, we see the word dawriya. Now, dawriya or patrol is something that is governmental, something that is state-owned, and it describes a unit like officially assigned by the police to do something, okay? Now, if we use this word to describe the unit or the troops that entered, I'm using the word entered, but I'll explain why entered isn't correct, Syria, then I'm doing something wrong from a political perspective or from a legal perspective. ليش? Now, like I mentioned, the word dawriya is something legal, something established by the country, the state, in order to do certain police work. Now, if we think of Israel, طبعا I'm saying Israel, but let's agree that we do not recognize it as a state. We recognize it as an occupying force or entity. So it's an occupation. But if I say Israel, I'm saying it because it's easier to just use it in explanation. But let's agree that we describe it as the occupation or the entity, not a state. Now, occupied Palestine, or as internationally recognized Israel, is a state, it's a country on its own. And then we have Syria, which is a country. So if we say, for example, a troop from Israel goes into Jordan, enters Jordan, this would sound awkward, wrong, incorrect, inaccurate. Why? Because Jordan is a country, it's an independent country, and Israel is an independent country. So it doesn't just, this troop or this unit doesn't just enter or advances into another country. What does it do? It invades. This is an invasion. So number one, we're going to lose the word dawriya. We're going to use unit. We're going to use la ilaha illallah. So we can use unit, troops, whatever we want. And then the word tatawaggal, again, we're not going to use it because it's not like we may use it in the context of Palestine, for example. Like some tanks advanced into some occupied cities like the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, God forbid, because they are part of the occupied state. Okay? So these troops are already there and they are already occupying that country, which is Palestine, and they have established units there, and they are advancing into these places. But if we're talking about moving into a different country, an entirely different country, a sovereign state like Syria, I understand the context and the problems that surround Syria. And if we use something like advanced into, then we're doing what we call euphemism, if you go back to the meaning of euphemism, and we are, let's say, reducing the severity of the situation. Okay. Now, when we translate, we need to also keep in mind the differences in the structures in the video in which I explained how we translate that text related to computers, if you remember that video. We explained the difference between English as a structure and Arabic as a structure. And one of the things that are good about English is that you can include information between like the subject and the verb that are related to the subject, like we did here. So instead of going with the entire piece of news and then returning to what this unit included, you can simply just add that information. So Israeli unit, 2 tanks and 7 armored vehicles, invades Syrian village. What did we do here? So we simply added the information that's related to the unit immediately after it using 2 commas. And the verb has to be in agreement with the subject. So this is the subject. That's why we used the verb in its singular form, not in its plural form, because the verb is relevant to the subject, is attached to the subject, not to the extra information we added here. The original statement goes, Israeli unit, which comprises 2 tanks, but we removed the relative subject, and we maintained the object. So Israeli unit, 2 tanks and 7 armored vehicles, invades. Now, every person or every one of you who sent their translation, I said you are missing a very important piece of information. So what is this very important piece of information? You all said the patrol, the unit, whatever, entered Bidjan. Now, why is it incorrect to just say Bidjan in a piece of news like this? Because readers who are English native, they will not know where this place is. Is it in Palestine? Is it in the West Bank? Is it in the Gaza Strip? Where is it? Where is this town? Because most of the Israeli or is it even in Lebanon? So most of the Israeli news is relevant to what's happening in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, sometimes in Lebanon. So this time it's in Beit Jan, which is in Syria. Now, if I write Beit Jan, the reader is not going to understand where this place is. So what's the better way to do it? It's to go back and say, Syrian village. Later on, if there is extra information you're going to include, you can explain that the town is called Beit Jan. Okay? So this is the piece of information that I said is very necessary, and none of you included except one of the guys. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but one of the guys did it and said that the invasion happened in Syria. Then what happened? The Israeli unit stations at an abandoned military barrack, targeting anyone approaching with gunfire. Most of you did this part correctly, so I'm not going to comment on it. The 3 main things that were wrong, using incorrect word for دورية, incorrect word for تتوغل, saying بلدة بيت جن without including or mentioning that it is in Syria. Okay? You have to keep that in mind. And this is similar to what we mentioned regarding, I think it was Qalandia. I don't remember the place. But again, you need to keep in mind that when you write for non-Arabs, especially when it comes to news, you need to understand that they don't master geography. They are not following up with everything that's happening in the Middle East. So you have to provide them with information you think they're going to need in order to understand what's happening. Okay. I also received a question about numbers. How do we write them when it comes to headlines or when they are part of a caption? Now, linguistically speaking, so linguistics, grammar, numbers from 1 to 10 are usually written with letters. يعني يكون في عندي مثلا I want to say I bought 2 apples. So we don't linguistically say I bought 2 apples. We start using numbers after 10. So I bought 11 apples. Okay? But when it comes to headlines, as I explained, because usually in design or in headlines, in design the posts or when it comes to links, editors usually prefer numbers. So we say 2 killed in attack. عشان هو لما يجي يصمم هذه التو يصممها بخط كبير كتير وتكون ظاهرة في التصميم وتنفع يعني تتناسب شكل التصميم. طيب هل أنا ممكن ألاقي حد كاتب two killed in attack كعنوان؟ طبعا بيعتمد على نظام هاي الصحيفة أو نظام هاي المؤسسة بدهم تنكتب بالأرقام ولا تنكتب بالحروف. Same thing applies to captions. الكابشن Israeli army announced killing مثلا 2 Palestinians. So you can say 2 Palestinians, you can say 2 Palestinians. It wouldn't really be much of a big deal. تمام؟ طيب قديش الغلط بيكون اللي أكيد غلط أو يعني ما بديش أقول أكيد غلط لكن أكيد مش متناسب معنا إني أنا يكون عندي الرقم أكتر من 10 ويروح إيش يكتبوا بالحروف. مثلا يروح يقول لي 22 Palestinians killed in attack عيد الشر يعني. فهاي الحالة no it's 22. اوكي طيب برضو في زميلتكم سألت ايش الفرق عن الأوب إد والإديتوريال. التنين opinion اوكي لكن الأولى الإديتوريال is usually done by the editing team تبع التابع لهاي المؤسسة أو هاي الصحيفة. يعني أنا مثلا بشتغل في الجزيرة أوكي فالإديتوريال أنا بكتبه it's an opinion أنا كتباه بس كواحدة موظفة بتشتغل في الجزيرة. الأوب إد اللي هي الأوبينيون إديتوريال مين بيكتبها؟ بيكتبها واحد من برا ما بيشتغل في هاي المؤسسة. نفترض إني أنا ما بشتغل في الجزيرة لكن قلت لهم بدي أنا أكتب عندكم opinion article فبروح بكتب عندهم هذا بنسميه أوب إد. فهي الفرق الوحيد بينهم بس إنه مين اللي كاتبه هل هو بيشتغل في هاي المؤسسة اللي نشرت ولا لا والله مش من هاي المؤسسة. طيب. I'm going to stop the recording now and start a new one عشان يسهل عليكم تحضروا.